Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear participants, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our study circle. Today we will begin by discussing a Quranic verse and move on to study Hadith, and of course we will also study a Bible verse, and then some discussion topics will also be brought up. So the verse that I'm going to study is from Surah Tawbah. It's verse 71. The words are وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. And believers, both men and women, are friends to one another. They urge one another to what is good and forbid what is evil. This is a very fundamental verse of the Quran and also tells us our relationship of being a well-wisher regarding all other people. And the primary reason for this is that just as there are things in the physical world which we like a lot for ourselves, and when we obtain them, we are so happy that we recommend our friends, our partners, our associates, our relatives to adopt them. For example, if we bought something cheap and good, and we also think that other people should benefit from this, we at times are so loud-mouthed that we try to become a person of advertisement of that particular thing that we have bought. So this comes naturally to us. In a very similar way, in the spiritual realm also, whenever we find something good, whenever we find something bad, it affects us spiritually and morally. When we see a person swearing, or when we see a person lying or being unjust to other people, this really has a very bad effect on us. On the other hand, when we see the opposite, when we find people showing compassion to other people, when we find people coming closer to each other, being kind, always telling the truth, upholding to justice, even if this upholding to justice means that you lose a lot of your own interest, your own personal wealth maybe, but still you do so. So this really revitalizes us. And it is here that the Quran says that if you like something and if you do not approve of something, both are so important to you that you have to realize that liking something as well as not liking something is something that you should recommend as well. You should give it to other people as well. For example, you are people who should urge one another to what is righteousness and disapprove to what is not righteousness. And you can see the stress here is so clear that the first part of the verse singles out men and women both. You see, it says وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ, which means that it's not only men, not only women, but men and women both are well-wishers of each other. They are friends to one another. And when this comes up as a injunction from the Quran, we can clearly see the stress in this verse as well. The stress in this verse is that we have to be friends of one another, we have to be well-wishers for one another, and look what the criteria of being a friend to the person is. I mean, this is such a sublime verse. It's such a different approach to what we would generally think. It says that it is the requisite of friendship between a believer, whether he is a man or a woman, that he always urges his or her fellow believers to what good is and stops or urges not to adopt what bad is. And I just like to point out here that the word ma'ruf is actually a very compelling word. It's a very important word. It does not relate to acts of religious righteousness. It actually refers to universal good, the universal goods or the universal values of goodness that all of us would like to adopt. So the word ma'ruf actually refers to everything which we universally think to be something that is close to our hearts. And the word munkar in a similar way does not relate to religious bad or religious evil. It actually relates to what our own inner self regards to be evil. And of course, again, these are universally accepted values. For example, as I just said, we do not like justice, but we like We do not like injustice, but we like justice. We do not like people telling a lie, but we, of course, appreciate people who tell the truth. So it's like understanding the fact that whatever is found in our nature, whatever is close to human nature, as far as its goodness is concerned or as far as its evil aspect is concerned, we have to understand that we must urge our brethren to adopt these. We must urge our brethren to stop what our own nature does not like for our own selves. So we have to understand that human nature is something which is absolutely sure of what maruf is and what munkar is. So it's common to all humanity. In other words, maruf is what is good to all humanity, morally good, and munkar is what is morally bad to all humanity. Every person recognizes moral evil and every person recognizes moral good. And the relationship between believers of friendship actually entails that they urge people to adopt what is morally good for them, and they urge people to abstain from what is morally not good for them. So I think this is such an important aspect of our daily lives, that well-wishing in the eyes of God, or becoming true friends of one another, actually is an area in which we have to be friends of the other person by actually urging him or her not to do something which his or her own conscience does not like, and do always what the conscience likes. So the criteria of friendship for the Quran is sublime. It's so different perhaps from what the criteria we generally might have for one another. The criteria is to be a well-wisher regarding righteousness, regarding basic human values, and the criteria is to be a well-wisher of the other person, that he or she does not end up in a spot of bother. So this is an important aspect that we need to keep in mind. Now, as far as the hadith of the day is concerned, now we move on to that part of our study circle. It has been actually narrated in the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, and the hadith actually is reported by Anas ibn Malik, who was, of course, a close attendant of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it says, "An Anas bin Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam qal, salasul man kunna fihi wajada halawat al-iman, an yakun Allah wa rasuluhu ahabba ilayhi mimma siwahuma, wa an yuhibba al-mar'a la yuhibbuhu illa lillah, وَأَنْ يَكْرَهَ أَنْ يَعُودَ إِلَى فِي الْكُفْرِ كَمَا يَكْرَهُ أَنْ يُقْذَفَ فِي النَّارِ." So Anas ibn Malik reported from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "He who has three qualities will acquire the sweetness of faith." And what are these qualities? Now the hadith goes on to spell those qualities. It says, God and His Messenger become dearer to him than the rest. This is the first thing. The second is he loves people only because of God, or only for the sake of God. And the third is that he dislikes returning to disbelief the way he dislikes being cast into hell. So these are the three very prominent things that this hadith mentions, and it says that if people adopt these three things, they will actually taste the sweetness of faith in them. So you see, faith is not something of a bland nature. It's something which has its own sweetness. It's something which has its own soul-stirring nature. It really affects our inner self. And how does it do so? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this particular hadith has actually outlined three very significant areas in which it is said that if we adopt these or adhere to these things, then we will also have the sweetness or the fragrance of faith right before us. And the first of them is that God and His Messenger become dearer to Him than the rest. What does this mean? Now, of course, this means that God and His Messenger, whatever they say, whatever they direct us to do, becomes our first priority in life. They become our first priority in life. We disregard all other people whenever there is a clash between what God and His Messenger say in what maybe someone else is saying, or maybe something what we ourselves are thinking. So whenever there is a clash between the directives of God and His Messenger, or the requisites of the religion brought by them or given to them, there is a clash between them and some other worldly affair, then God and His Messenger become dearer to that person than the rest. So, of course, when it says that become dear to them by the rest, it actually means that for the guidance that they stand for the faith that they stand for the directives that they give us, whenever there's a clash, who have to prevail in this matter. The second thing which the verse actually says is that He loves people only because of God. Now, what does this mean? It actually means that a person loves someone simply because he or she is conforming to the standards of the Almighty, the way they have been set. So it's not for his own personal gain or her own personal gain that she might like a person or dislike a person. Her liking or his liking for a person is because that particular person is conforming to the ideals which are set by God Himself. So this is such an important thing that we need to understand, that our lives have to be shaped in a way that our own associations with the people around us, our own affinities with the people around us, our own, the way we come together to other people, they are governed because we think that the person is someone who is in his own actions, in his own or in her own right, is someone who is talking about God, who is thinking about God, who is perhaps leading or conducting his or her life in a manner which is actually liked by the Almighty Himself. So, of course, this does not mean that a person cannot love other people, or he has or she has to dislike other people. No, that's not the case here. The stress actually here is that he or she is a person whose basic priority in life is such, or his basic or her basic friendship or likeness for people is such, that if that particular person is closer to him, is endeared to him, it is simply because that particular person is a person who is a godly person. He or she is a person who walks in the way of God, who treads the path of God. So this is a very important and significant thing that we need to realize. And look what the third aspect is mentioned, how it is mentioned, and that is أن يكره أن يعود في الكفر كما يكره أن يقذف في النار. So returning to disbelief for him or her is as shabby, is as unacceptable to return to hellfire. So just as we would not like ourselves to end up in hellfire, such is this faith dear to us that we would never like to lose it. It's our most prized possession. It's our most endeared possession. Faith is the primary reason for which we live and give and interact with other people. And that is why, if you remember, the prayer that we often offer on a funeral, when we are actually praying for a dear departed, it says that, God, when you give us life on faith. When you give us death, let us die as Muslims, let us die as true believers. So faith is something which is of paramount significance to us, and losing one's faith in any way is like ending up in hell. So this is how we need to understand that as far as our values are concerned, as far as our life is concerned, for us the primary reason to survive, the primary reason to go anywhere, to settle anywhere, to do something, is to nurture our faith, is to nourish our faith, is to make it go stronger, is to make it go to other people, to sink in the hearts of other people. So such is the sweetness of faith. And remember, this hadith actually started off with these beautiful words when it says, Salasum man kunna fihi wajada halawat al-iman. There are three qualities which a person, if he actually has these three qualities, then he or she has actually acquired the sweetness of faith. And the sweetness of faith is, as I have been saying all along, is of our topmost priority in whatever undertaking that we do. When we get up in the morning, when we make out our timetable, when we go to our offices or our schools or do any undertaking, to us, faith is of primary importance. And what does that mean? It actually means that faith in God, faith in the hereafter, faith in the prophets, faith in the books of God, it encompasses a faith in all entities, it becomes dear to us in our undertakings. If there is a clash between our faith values and between other worldly values, we always give preference to our faith values. And this is how a believer has to spend his or her life. Because now let us go on to the third part of our Bible, or the third part of our study section. And this, of course, is the Bible verse. In fact, this time we have more verses of the Bible that we are selecting. And before I read these Bible verses, just to give you a background, and that is that please do remember we have been discussing all along that as far as the Quran is concerned, or as far as the practices of the Prophet Muhammad are concerned, this guidance, of course, is nothing new. Right from Adam, the fountainhead or the progenitor of humanity, he has been given the same guidance all along. In the last session, we discussed how the prayer or the namaz or the salah was given to all prophets of God. All these 5 prayers that we offer regularly were offered and recommended and urged by all earlier prophets. So these worship rituals should not be considered as being ones which have been instituted by the Prophet Muhammad. They have been, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they have been existing, they have been going on ever since time immemorial, ever since the first prophet set forth his foot on this earth, and who of course was Adam sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we need to understand this, that all worship rituals are mentioned, have been brought to us in a manner that we are always acquainted. These worship rituals should not be something that we find as if Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the first to introduce them to humanity. No, he was not the first person to introduce them to humanity. Humanity already knew them. He just needed to revive them. He just needed to maybe correct certain erroneous concepts that had infiltrated in these. So with these words, I'd now like to take you to some passages of the Bible in which you can clearly see that Bible mentions the zakat, the obligatory charity that we have to pay. And we know that just as zakah has to be paid in our wealth, it has also to be paid. It is also to be paid in production. And in the times of the earliest prophets, most zakat was collected through production, because the biggest source of income in those times was actually production and agricultural production. So that is why what we call ushur in our Islamic terminology, or 1/10 of the produce, which we give in case of non-rainy lands and of rainy lands, and if they are non-rainy lands, they have to be watered by us. Then it's half of ushur, which is 1/5, which is of course 1/20. So these rates have been mentioned in the Bible as well. So just as it's the established sunnah which has been transferred to us through the Prophet Muhammad, that these are the rates of zakat, in a very similar way, the same rates of zakat have been mentioned in earlier books and in earlier traditions. In the Quran, the rates of zakat have not even been touched upon, simply because they had become an established tradition, an established practice. But just to give you this idea that as far as zakat is concerned, it was nothing new, it had already existed. Look at what the Bible says. And now I'm going to read out this verse. You might be seeing it on your screen. So it's from the book of Leviticus, chapter 27, verses 30 and 31. It says, a teeth of everything, the teeth of course is 1/10, is ushur. A teeth of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the trees, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to the Lord. If a man redeems any of his teeth, he must add 1/5 of the value to it. The entire teeth of the herd and flock, every 10th animal that passes under the shepherd's rod, will be holy to the Lord. So it's exactly the same thing. 1/10 of whatever you have will be holy to the Lord, and every 10th part of the land of the seed planted or of the fruit of trees is holy to the Lord. And if a man has a desire to get back any of the 10th part which he has given, let him give 1/5 more. So these are further directives which actually refine that basic injunction that we have to give 1/10 of what we have from the land. So it says, whether from grain or from the soil or the fruit of the trees, he has to pay 1/10 of that, whatever he produces. And it has to be the entire teeth. And this is inclusive of the flocks that he has, the herd and the flock. Every 10th animal that passes under the shepherd's rod will be holy for the Lord, which of course means it will be dedicated to the Lord. So 1/10 of your produce, 1/10 of your animals, so everything has to be given to the Lord, which of course is the same thing. Of course, in the matter of animal livestock, there is a different formula that we do apply, but as in the broad sense, you can clearly see that this teeth is actually the same as ushur that we all know very well. Similarly, now let's go on to the Old Testament. Of course, we have already read one book of the Old Testament, Leviticus. Let's just read one more excerpt, and this is from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 14, verse 22. It says, "Put on one side 1/10 of all the increase of your seed produced year by year." So produce whatever you have produced, it has to be 1/10, and of course the fact is that it has to be year by year, of course, meaning that whenever you produce, you have to give that 1/10. And now let me take you to the New Testament. And the New Testament, of course, has very similar words. And we also know that the New Testament is not a book which has been revealed afresh. It was actually a completion of the Old Testament. And that completion meant that it was just rehearsing the directives of the Old Testament at times and merely explaining the wisdom behind them. So this is an important thing that we need to realize regarding the New Testament, that the New Testament is not just something which is presenting an entirely new Sharia. As far as the Sharia or the directives are concerned, they have already been jotted down. They are already present in the Old Testament. And that is why the Prophet Jesus ﷺ is reported to have said that he has not come to revoke the law, which of course is the Torah. He has come to complete it, to fulfill it, which of course means that he intends to add that element of wisdom, of hikmah, of the underlying reason, so that people understand why they are doing certain things. So this is what the book of Matthew, chapter 23, verses 23 and 24 look like. It says, "A curse is on you, scribes and Pharisees, false ones, for you make men give 1/10 of all sorts of sweet-smelling plants, but you give no thought to the more important things of the law, righteousness and mercy and faith. But it is your right for you to do these and not to let the others be undone. You blind guides who take a fly from your drink, but make no trouble over a camel." Of course, these sublime words of Prophet Jesus and the way he speaks in parables, the way he speaks in such a soul-stirring way, in such an invigorating way, is another chapter that perhaps we will discuss someday. And you can also see the force that these words have even in their translation. And we can well imagine if the original had survived, or part of the original had survived, and we were able to read the original words, how moving they would have been and how more influential and more potent they would have been in their effect. So it says, "The curse is on you, scribes and Pharisees." Of course, we know that the scribes and Pharisees were the Jewish scholars and some of their descendants and part of their fraternity, who were looking after the synagogues, who would be looking after the religious affairs of people, and they had become corrupt. And you can see from the Bible that the Prophet Jesus is primarily addressing these scribes and these Pharisees of their evil and malevolent intent, in fact. And we need to understand that this is one of the themes of the Bible, in which the Prophet Jesus is someone who is always rebuking them for their ill ways and for their malevolence. And he says that these people urge other people to give the 10th, but they themselves abstain. "For you make men give 1/10 of all sorts of sweet-smelling plants, but you give no thought to the more important things of the law, righteousness and mercy." So the stress is that these Pharisees and these scribes had given themselves up more towards the legal aspect, and they were always extracting the teeth from the people and urging them to pay it. Whereas besides the teeth as well, they should have been ones who would have urged people to righteousness and mercy. So it says, "No thought to the more important things of the law, righteousness, mercy, and faith. But it is the right for you to do these and not to let the others be undone." And then those famous words, "You blind guides who take out a fly from your drink, but make no trouble over a camel." When you swallow a camel, you do big evils, but you are very careful in not committing very small evils. So This is, of course, an attitude towards which Jesus has been seen in the Bible as rebuking and trying to correct. So you can see how Usher is mentioned in the Bible as well. So with these words, we come to an end to the second part, the first part of our study circle, in which you can clearly see that what has been mentioned here is actually something which tells us that the religion that we have been given, or the law that we have been given, is nothing new. It is something that we already know because of the fact that it had been given to the previous prophets, especially the worship rituals. So the Salah, the Zakah, Hajj, charity, animal sacrifice, they pre-existed the Prophet Muhammad, and that is why their details are not generally mentioned in the Quran. They existed as established practices in the Arabian society, and the Prophet just needed to sanction them, and that is what he did. And it also answers the question that these are nothing new to people who professed faith in the Prophet Muhammad. They pre-existed, and previous prophets also subscribed to these practices. Now, before we go on to answer our questions, which of course is the fifth segment, I have slightly changed the format of our study circle, in which of course we used to have a questions and an answer session after these three segments. So I have just deferred it to the last part of our study circle. And as for the fourth segment, I will now just let you know the topic that we're going to discuss and perhaps talk about. And then if you have any questions, I will take those questions. So the topic of discussion is finding passion and purpose in life. This I say and always try to actually make a very important point out of it, is that generally we people are lost souls. Of course, when I say lost souls, I do refer to the fact that we do not have any purpose in life. We do not have any passion in life. Our lives are oriented around certain routines. For example, we get up in the morning, we go to the office, we come back, we take a nap, maybe go for some visiting in the evening or do some household chores. Night falls and then we sleep, and then we start the next day all over again with almost the same routine. It's like being a component of a machine that is chugging along. And we need to understand that this is more akin to an animal life, and all animals also do the same thing. They have a certain set routine. What makes a human being a person on a higher plane is that he also has that divine spark in him or her, which makes him or her realize that there is a purpose in life, there is a passion in life that he or she must discover. You see, each person has something which God has gifted him or her in her own or in his own right, on our own nature. We have to discover that. We have those talents, of course, which are at times dormant in us. They are there, but what happens is that they are not properly discovered at the right time. And this is actually what happens. What actually happens is that we end up wasting those talents. So we, whatever our age, don't forget, don't worry if you're 70 years old or 80 years old. Even today you realize that there has to be a purpose in life. Please set yourself a purpose in life. And that purpose in life has to be commensurate, has to be in harmony with one's own talent, with one's own aptitude. Of course, if you have some passion, if you have some objective in life, and if it is not in consonance with your own aptitude and talent, it will not work. So first find out that internal talent that you have, and more often than not, those talents or those inner potentials manifest themselves in the form of hobbies that we do. So we have people who read a lot, there are people who travel a lot, there are people who are painters, there are people who are writers, there are people who are fond of gardening, there are people who are fond of helping other people. So there's so many personality types. So in short, please discover your own personality type before it's too late. And it's never too late. As long as your breath is coming to you, there is still time. There is still time. Discover that inner potential. Discover those things which come naturally to you. Discover those things in which you lose track of time. And of course, this means that they really involve you. And of course, those things in which you have produced results. Maybe your own contemporaries praise you that you have done something good in that area. It already reflects that that is an area in which you have done something which is commendable and which other people praise a lot. So, if not already, please find a passion and a purpose of your life. And that passion and that purpose, as I said, has a lot to do with your own personal aptitudes and your own personal talents, because they are going to drive you and make you go stronger. Always remember that if you are able to find passion and purpose in life, you'll be able to contribute to the society that you live in a very positive way, because this is what God has made you for. This is the frontier on which God has actually deputed on. You should not be like a soldier who goes to some other frontier without realizing where his own frontier is, which of course is his or her own inner talent. So inner talent, your inner passion has to be discovered, whatever the age, whatever your circumstances. You can start right now, today, at this instant, to find out a purpose, a passion in life, and then lead your life according to that passion and purpose. And you know what? The first reward that you'll get, inshallah, for this is that you will have a renewed interest in life. You will forget about depression. You will forget about those low feelings on those mood swings that come to you. You'll find that passion driving you. You'll find that purpose driving you and making your life light up. It'll make your own life light up, and in the society that you live in, you'll become a lighthouse for that society. Because you see, when you do something out of your passion and purpose, it comes out to the world as well. It does not stay in one place. It manifests itself before other people, and therefore you find yourselves to be very comfortable, very satisfied souls who are really, really enjoying life. So if you want to enjoy life, if you want to also do something which is worthwhile, regarding which people will remember you once you pass away, then find a passion, find a purpose in life, find an objective in life, find a mission in life. You have to have a mission in life. Without a mission, it's like a ship who can just go anywhere. You can set sail on rough waters and the wind will take you wherever it would like to. But if you have a purpose in life, if you have your own set pattern, then you will drive that ship to that destination, and that driving of the ship to the destination will actually exude positive energy. It will exude positivity. It will also affect other people with your positivity, and most of all, it will bring you that peace of mind and that God connection, because you will thank God that He has blessed you with this ability with which you actually made life more easy for your own self. So this is also a means of having a strong connection with God. If you want to have a strong God connection, do something meaningful, because that will also make you realize that the talent that you had, which made you actually such a person, was a God-gifted talent, and hence you have to be a person who must be very, very thankful to his or her his Creator. So with these words, we come to an end to these 4 segments, my dear viewers and participants. I can unmute your mics. If you have any question, please let me know, and we can then proceed. And those people who are viewing this session on their Facebooks can also perhaps inform me of their questions if they have. If I'm not able to answer them right away, I can always write down the answers as replies to your Facebook questions. So it seems that we have no questions today. Perhaps all of us are in a reflective mood, and that's okay. I find one hand going up, and that is of Adila Asad. So Adila Asad, I'm going to unmute your mic. So please go ahead with your question.
A few days ago, I went to this dars, and there was a lady. She was giving the dars. She was very good. She was excellent. But it raised a question in my mind. She said it's not allowed for women to put false eyelashes and extensions and wigs. If we do that, then we won't even, or in her words, we won't even go near the Jannah.
Mm-hmm.
We won't even we can't even have male of Jannah near.
Right.
So he was very strict about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a little confused, because I was raised in Pakistan, and there's so many salons everywhere, wherever you go, and all the dulhans, everyone who comes out of there, they have extensions, they have eyelashes. it's very confusing, because if it's such a big thing, it could be stopped immediately.
So I think what we need to understand is that wherever our religion stops us from doing certain things, there has to be some moral ground for that. In the absence of any such moral ground, there is no reason for any prohibition. So in the times of the Prophet, and of course today as well, there are areas in which women embellish themselves in order to deceive other people. For example, hiding their age if someone is maybe picked for matchmaking purpose, or other reasons. For example, if they have a test to give regarding certain criteria in an organization, they have to disclose their age, and they actually make up their age, or they are lying in their age. So all such things like your extensions or hair extensions or anything which are done for the purpose of deceiving other people, they are the ones which we of course never condone. However, as far as extensions are concerned, which are merely for the purpose of your embellishing yourself, maybe for the merely for the purpose of looking good, because you see, women have been given this special urge to adorn themselves, to look nice or to feel nice. Of course, men also do have that urge, but women in particular have this urge to make themselves up, and this is not something which is forbidden. But when this is done for the purpose of deceiving others, then it is here that it becomes questionable. So all such narratives or all such ahadith which say that these extensions or these eyelashes or whatever are something which make us go away from paradise, they all refer to such practices in which the purpose is to deceive the other person or to deceive the world and achieve some gain out of that, and of course which we would never like from our own conscience.
So just for makeup, just for that purpose, it's okay to do that?
Of course, it's certainly okay. There's not a problem at all, because you see, what you're doing is you're just cosmetically trying to increase the beauty that maybe God has blessed you with, or whatever you have. So if it's like, just to give you a very rough example, when we do cosmetic surgery, it is something very similar. Of course, God has given you something which might be okay, but still you wouldn't like to increase that in its outward look or outlook. So you have those cosmetic surgeries. So as far as they are not done to violate any moral principle, there is absolutely nothing wrong with them. And so we have to realize that things which are given in hadith literature, which at times become absolute prohibitions, we have to question them. But why is it that the Prophet or the Almighty has made them prohibited? And always remember that there has to be a moral reason or a moral underlying reason. Otherwise, at times what happens is that in a hadith, that particular reason is left out by the narrator, and it is not mentioned clearly by the narrator. And this has happened in so many hadiths. And what we do is we end up following that hadith without realizing that a part of that understood area has either been omitted or skipped, or it has been left to our own common sense. All these things are possibilities.
Right. So wouldn't you say that it's better to clarify when you're giving a verse or anything, to go into detail and explain it very clearly? Because we all got the wrong message from there.
Right. So it happens, unfortunately, that because we have been trained and educated in a manner that we seldom decipher or study a hadith in the light of the Quran. And that is why these absolute prohibitions have come up. Of course, we would like all such teachers to pay heed, but unfortunately, because our system of teaching has become such that instead of interpreting a hadith or the narratives of the Prophet in the light of the Quran, we actually go the other way around. And this has actually changed the stress and actually made things go totally, I would say, topsy-turvy. What was right has become wrong. What was a very small prohibition has become a huge prohibition. What was something which had to be done became a very small object, a very small piece of righteousness. So we have to keep correcting ourselves, and that's how we will learn. And of course, to whomever we can educate or transfer this wisdom is from something of our own responsibility. But yes, this is something which is going on in our ummah for a very long time, and slowly and surely we have to try to mend the situation.
Can I just ask you a question? Because you've mentioned hadith right now.
Mm-hmm.
I started reading the book of hadith, but I put them away because I was not able to understand them.
Mm-hmm.
So Just to ask you, if you're going to do Hadith, is it better to do it with a teacher or someone? Because I thought it was impossible to understand like this.
So, of course, there are Hadith anthologies which you can study even without a teacher, and they are helpful because they have been prepared, keeping in view the fact that things which are against the Quran are not mentioned. But still, because these compilations are human efforts, you can always find things which might not be in consonance with the Quran. But the best thing is that read any anthology of Hadith, and whenever you come across something which you might not understand properly, or you think that it is something which is weird or is going against the general common sense or the general temperament of religion, you can discuss and ask those things. So there's yet to be a final anthology of Hadith which you can, of course, totally rely on, because collecting and compiling a Hadith was never done by the Prophet himself or even by the Almighty. This is what people did after the Prophet, and when they did so, of course, there were certain errors which crept. So this work is still going on in the Ummah, that people bring up new anthologies. So you just select one anthology. At Al-Mawrid also we have published some anthologies. You can go through them as well. But other than that, just trust your own gut feeling. And whenever you think that there is something which you are not being able to understand, or whenever there is something in a Hadith which prohibits something which is perhaps inexplicable, or tells us of a huge reward for a very small act, then of course they need to be discussed by some person who has knowledge of these things.
Thanks.
Okay, I have Farah Naz. She has raised her hand. Okay, please go ahead, Farah Naz. So I have unmuted your mic, Farah Naz. Please, if you have a question. Are you able to hear us? So you have to unmute your mic. Yes, it's now unmuted. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. So perhaps there is something wrong on your own side. We are not being able to hear you. Or if you can write your question in the chat box, maybe we can go through that. Other than that, if there's still a problem, you can perhaps email me your question, or I'll try to go through it and answer you. So viewers, this brings us to an end to this session, and hope to see you next week, inshallah, at the same time. Have a blessed Ramadan. Remember, we are passing through a month that we might never have the chance to be present in the next year. Many of us would not be here in this world. Make the best out of it. And just to give you a small reminder that the most important objective or the purpose of Ramadan is self-accountability. Realize that God has given you this opportunity to reevaluate your life, to set new priorities, to see whether something is going wrong in our lives, and make a note of this, that this meditation, this self-accountability is of very prime importance, and this actually is something which produces taqwa, which is the primary objective of the fast. So always keep yourselves in line with this mode of self-accountability, and in these remaining fasts that we have, please make a very threadbare analysis of your own personality and of your own lives, and see how you can correct certain things. So thank you very much, inshallah, and see you next week. Take care. Khuda Hafiz.